All right, Clark Wolfe, one of my favorite people coming on the Reilly Roundtable. Finally. I have to ask, what's the horror movie that did it? What was that movie
Yes.
that did it for you?
Well, going way, way back.
Oh, yeah.
When I was 5 years old, I had a really terrible babysitter who, for some reason, decided to show us the miniseries, the It miniseries. Showing a 5-year-old the stuff. Like, what?
Because scary clowns aren't going to scare a 5-year-old.
And it's like, I have gone back and watched it, and it is super dumb and not scary. And, you know, God bless Tim Curry, but I don't even think his performance really holds up all that much. But to a 5-year-old, that's all you need.
Exactly.
So that was the first one. And then it transitioned into when I was 12, watching The Exorcist at a Halloween sleepover and just being so terrified and closing my eyes, but still hearing all the horrible things that were going on.
Oh, and especially The Exorcist.
I mean, the sound is like iconic sound design.
Yeah.
And so that also caused me to, without exaggeration, not sleep for a year.
Oh, my God.
I was so scared. And but once I got into high school... I would say maybe it was Scream, because once I was in high school, stuff was less scary to me.
Right.
You know, of course, because you're older and whatever. But Scream, I think, was the one that really made me realize that there could be importance and, like, you know, bigger conversations going on underneath the surface of the scares.
Yes.
And Wes Craven, as you know, is my favorite horror auteur, and the reason is because of that. So his movies were the ones, like, where I really realized, oh, like, they're talking about stuff, and these are, like, great ideas and big ideas. So that's like the wave trifecta.
I have a similar one. Like, for me, with my sister, my grandmother, we lived walking distance from a mom and pop VHS store. And she went, I'm taking a nap, you kids go get a VHS. We're like, great. So we walk, Friday the 13th, the original. And we're like, can we do this? Should we do this? The guy, God bless him, let us rent Friday the 13th, come back, sneak it in. I loved it. Started getting into horror movies, but it was Amityville 2, The Possession. I saw that. Scared the living shit out of me because I was at that age where family was everything. And that one was all about him killing the entire family. I could not sleep. I swore off horror for many, many years. But I think a lot like you, I moved into horror and started to revisit, which is some of the stuff that I want to talk about now. Hello, welcome. It's the Reilly Roundtable, episode 14. My God, it's episode 14. The Reilly Roundtable here on Christian Harloff One-on-One, Christian Harloff Podcast One feed here at Collider Video. Thank you all for joining me on this wonderful episode. And I'm not going to bury the lead here because one of my favorite people in this space is finally coming on. And we're going to do it because everybody, when she came on Collider Live, people were like, I love seeing Reilly and Clark talk about horror movies again. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about horror movies. We're going to talk about slasher films. We're going to talk about everything horror and everything in between, all of that. Clark Wolfe, thank you for coming. How are you, my dear?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
And speaking of scary things, for our viewers,
sure.
I did not know I was going to be on camera today.
Yeah, I know.
So I have no makeup on, and I wore this really attractive schlubby T-shirt today because I was getting comfy.
I'm going to bet that the audience will take Clark no matter.
Well...
As we all will, because I don't notice.
Very kind.
And like I said before we went on air, I am not wearing makeup either.
Yes.
So this works.
Boys
this totally
get
works.
beards to hide, though. You know what I mean? Like, beards are not fair.
Yeah. I do my beard because I don't want to show sometimes my fat face. Because I would retain the fat like right here, and so I'm like, the beard works. And then my mom the other day is like, there's gray in your beard. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. I love the gray in the beard.
Distinguished?
Yeah.
Sure.
Gentleman, it's a silver fox almost.
Yeah, and then my dad was like, you have gray in your hair. I'm like, yeah, it's happening. I'm old. What can I say?
My boyfriend recently... He dyed it. Mark Andreyko at the Schmodown Live was like, who's that silver fox out there? Is that your boyfriend? And I was like, yeah, it sure is. And he's going gray too. And he definitely has like patches in his beard. And one day we were going away for the weekend or something. And I looked over at him and I was like, did you dye your beard? He wasn't going to tell me. He was like, no. And I was like, yes, you did.
That is so sweet.
Why?
He didn't want to tell you.
I don't know why. I was like, I like the gray. I think it's cute. Plus, it makes me look younger.
Exactly.
So.
That's what the guy's job is to do, is to
Right.
make the woman look better.
That's exactly right.
That's what I try to do. Well, thank you again for coming, Clark. This is a long time coming. I had the best time. Not only, yes, we're going to get into some nightmares talk. We're going to get into the horror talk. But one of my favorite experiences with you was sending in the Wolfe, talking Sideways.
That was so fun.
That was a great episode. Recently did the Sideways tour again with some friends, some wine tasting, and to you, I was talking about the podcast, and Julie and me, my fiance, we were like, we're going to meet some friends. But let's go to this little eatery here in Solvang. We need some breakfast. Let's eat here first before we meet everybody. And they went, right this way, sir. And they sat us down at the booth where Miles and Jack ate breakfast the first day that they're there. And they had the plaque. And I'm like, yeah, it's one of those weekends.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Sideways, there it was.
Please listen to it, audience, if you haven't. It was a great conversation.
It was such a great conversation. And a lot of people tuned in. They were really excited about that. And then one guy on Twitter was like, why don't you talk about horror? And I'm like, because you've seen us on Nightmares.
Yeah.
You've seen us talk about horror. But then coming around to here for episode 14, which I can't believe, I have to talk about horror with you because I got the idea when we were doing Collider Live. And a lot of things have been happening lately and in the horror space centered around Halloween. Mm-hmm. And I thought it would be really fun to get your take on it and talk about it and get, because John Schnepp is behind me, get sweaty with this.
It's time to get sweaty.
It's time to get sweaty. But let's start here, Miss Clark Wolfe.
Yes.
Co-champ, by the way, which I love. But, I mean, I guess we could talk a little bit about Schmo down there.
Yeah.
Because I know it'll come up many times. But as your ex-partner.
Yes.
When you won.
Yes. And
I was standing in the audience, your face and Rachel's face, but you guys, that was one of my favorite moments. Your face, this is Clark, and your winner. Yes. And I was like, that's my partner. Yes. Oh, yeah. God bless you. How did you feel after that big win?
It felt really good in the moment for sure. I mean, I think that I mentioned this on the rundown too, but I think it's really important to say, like, Rachel and I really felt like we played a great game.
Oh, yeah, you did.
We were really proud of the game.
Dialed in.
Yeah, and I think we played a great game, not only trivia wise, but strategy wise.
Yes.
And like Schmodown specific great game.
Yes.
We were really, really pleased with that. And I think, you know, for the audience, like, some people are really into the theatrics of it, which we enjoy too, but we also really, Rachel and I and Mark and Emma are all nerds for the game.
Yeah.
And so because of that, like, we were extra proud and extra excited that was the way that we were able to finally score gold, you know?
Yeah.
So it was very, very cool, and it felt great in the moment, and we were very proud.
Yeah, I was very proud. I felt like a doting father, I guess. I don't know, off to the side, because the strategy, you're right. I'm picking up more on the strategy that people do. Not that I didn't before, but it's interesting. Mm-hmm. It's so much fun. So that's my congrats to start this show. But let's go into the horror stuff because I miss Nightmares. I really do.
I miss Nightmares too, especially now that Halloween's coming up.
I know. Halloween's coming up, but we can tease that we will be doing something at Collider for a special video series for Halloween in particular. Not the movie, but the
holiday.
The holiday. And what is your handle going to be, Clark Wolfe, for Twitter?
This is a great question.
Right?
And I haven't decided yet.
I haven't either.
Last year, I was Clark's Werewolves. Okay. Which I very much enjoyed. Yeah. And then the year before that, I've tried to do an American Clark Wolfe in London.
That's great.
It's too long. It's too long. So Twitter, like, you know, when they expanded to 240 characters, they didn't give you any more up top. So
that's stupid.
I got to figure figure out a way. I might be. I don't know how I'll be able to do it, but. I don't know.
Okay.
Leaning into the wolves once again, but I have made no decisions yet. Have you changed yours yet?
No, that was my next question. Is it okay to change in September like all of Twitter has done already, or should we wait for Halloween, which is what I'm going to do, October 1st?
Yes.
I'm doing the month.
So I think this is a personal choice.
Yes.
Same with Halloween decorations.
Which they're already out there.
They're already out.
Oh, yeah.
I shame no one for if you want to drink a pumpkin spice latte on Labor Day weekend,
Absolutely.
you do you.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Just there's so much horrible shit going on in this world. Drink your pumpkin spice latte.
Drink it.
And enjoy your life.
Absolutely.
But for me, so I vary. Like last year, I decorated a little early.
Okay.
And, by the time Halloween was over, I was like, I'm done with this.
Yeah, that was
I'm
a
ready.
long month.
Exactly. It was like a long 6 weeks, 7 weeks. So this year, I am going to really do my best to hold everything until October 1st.
Yeah.
I
Same.
may, for me, sometimes the unofficial start for me to the Halloween season is Fantastic Fest, which is
right. Are you going?
I'm going, yeah,
Nice.
and that's next week. It starts next
wow.
week, next Thursday.
Okay.
So that's like the end of September. You've been watching, horror and exploitation movies for however many days, and then when I come back to LA, I'm like, okay, it's Halloween time now.
It's on.
So I'm aiming for October 1, but I reserve the right to start a little early.
There you go. I always wait for October 1st, but to Clark's point, you do you, internet and people, and I get it, and I can't wait either. But I started to think about it really with the Twitter thing happening, and through my Patreon, we have a Discord, which is access to just basically a private chat.
Mm-hmm.
And I found everybody starting to share movies, horror movies, decorating. And I went, that's interesting. Well, okay. And I jumped in and I'm having fun. And I'm like looking at the clock and I'm like, wait, it's September 5th. What's going on here? Then I see it on Twitter. And then the Nun opens huge. And I'm like, wait, horror is really happening right now. This might be a good indication that people just want to celebrate the genre.
Yeah.
I don't see why we can't do that. And sure, to each their own. I make fun of people on Twitter that have already changed it, but I really am looking at it a lot now, and I'm like, wow, horror. We talked about it on Nightmares. We talked about it opening huge. The Nun opens huge. I just think horror is really just popping right now.
Yeah, and I think it's also fall, meaning like even though I know it's not officially fall, I think when Labor Day comes and goes, it really is the unofficial end of summer, start to fall.
Yeah.
And now that you're right, it came out, right after Labor Day weekend.
Yep.
Yeah. And then now The Nun had another big scary movie opening the week after Labor Day weekend. So I think people are just, in addition to wanting to, there's an appetite for horror and an appetite for genre that's year round at this point. I do think that by the time Labor Day rolls around, people are they're over fall, they're over summer, and they're
over
it's
summer.
time for fall.
Yeah, and I think it's fun because I love Christmas as well. I love the holiday season, and people just want something to celebrate.
Okay, so this is a question that I have for you on that topic.
Okay.
Because for me, I get so mad when Christmas starts on November 1st.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's still Thanksgiving.
I totally agree with you.
I feel like Christmas season starts the day after Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Black Friday, whatever you want to call it, whether you shop or not.
Yeah.
And so when people do the Christmas decorations too soon, that I'm like, come on, just like Halloween. And it's weird because it's like, I'm such a hypocrite because I just said, do whatever makes you happy. You do you. But I don't want to look at Christmas for 2 months, you know?
You bring up a point, though, that I happen to agree with because last year, before Thanksgiving, in fact, it was before Halloween. It was a week before Halloween. There are those Christmas decorations all just
which is
ready.
Insane. That's
just
insane.
Right up against
October.
Yep.
No.
And I took a picture and I put it on Twitter and I said, go home, Christmas. You're being a bully. Because you're like, nope, I'm the most popular. And they're trying to get in there. And I'm like, come on. I'm with you. Poor Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
The Jan Brady of holidays. It's
So
like
true.
nobody cares. It's like the middle child. Everybody's like, oh, Halloween is, and then Christmas. And then, yeah, but what about giving thanks? And I'm with you. I think it's too. Christmas has been doing that for years now, and I see Halloween doing it, but I'm okay with it now. We're getting ready. It's the horror season, I guess officially now. And it goes to my previous question at the beginning of this episode: the movie that did it, or what got you into horror, or your first memory, so to speak. And you said It.
Yeah.
At 5 years old.
Yeah, which is
that
wrong.
babysitter. What's her name?
Yeah, Angie. Don't
Angie.
hire Angie. She's a very bad babysitter.
Angie, you know, I had my sister and the babysitter. They pulled a horror prank on me. They recorded themselves on a little microphone making noise, and they hid it in the back near the patio door.
Oh,
and
no.
they said, somebody's breaking in. And I freaked out. I went, we have to call 911. I grabbed the phone, and I run, and I start calling 911.
my
And
God.
everybody tackled me and said, stop. We were playing a joke on you. And then my babysitter went, oh, that was really good, Mark. You did the right
Yeah,
thing.
good. You're good in a panic.
I
good
was
in a crisis.
I was going to save the whole team from Michael Myers entering the building, which is what I thought it was, actually, because I was into Halloween back then.
Of course, there you go.
So It at 5 years old, and then later on Scream.
Yes.
But what are some of why horror? Why did Clark Wolfe become the host of Nightmares that everybody wants to go to talk about horror, including this guy who was such a big fan of yours before I got to know you so well? In horror, it's like, I know I can talk horror with you.
Yeah.
Just every day till Sunday.
So generous.
Well, of course.
So for me, I had another babysitter who was before Angie.
Oh, boy.
And her name was Heather, and I'm actually still in touch with Heather.
Nice.
But so I had this great babysitter named Heather who was young, and she was an artist, and she, 80s, 90s kid she was, and so she was showing me Pee-wee's Playhouse, and she was introducing me to Tim Burton and Beetlejuice, and these are the things that were Neverending Story, Legend, Labyrinth. Those are
horror elements in those, all of those.
I like to say they're kind of dark fantasy.
Yeah,
And
especially Legend is I remember that scaring me.
It's terrifying. It's still scary.
Yeah.
Legend, it's funny because it's still messed up, I would say. How sometimes you can look back, another Tim Curry vehicle.
Yeah, there it is.
But you can look back at something like the It miniseries and be like, wow, this is atrocious. This is very bad.
Yeah.
And even he is giving it all he has, but it's very one note,
Yeah.
right? But with something like Legend, yes, it's 80s, it's dated, and also because Tom Cruise is such a baby face in it.
Oh, I know.
But I still think that the prosthetics and darkness and the world that they live in is actually still really upsetting and terrifying and scary, you know?
For a kid, yeah.
And even for a grown-up. I saw it on the big screen a few years ago, and I remember being like, this is messed up.
Yeah, it's kind of messed up.
But so that was doable for me.
Okay.
That was doable for me. Another one was The Witches.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nicholas Roeg's movie. And I've told this story before, but that movie, about 20 minutes in, Angelica Houston as the Grand High Witch takes her face off, and she just looks essentially like a vulture.
Yeah.
And as far as I was concerned, The Witches was a 20-minute short film that ended with a lady taking her face off. I was like, no!
Pretty
we're
accurate.
Done. Until finally, Heather said to me, she was like, but the thing was, even though I was always a scared kid, and I would still go back to the video store every week and be like, we got to rent it. And finally, Heather was like, listen, I know this part is scary, but this is definitely the scariest part in the whole movie. So why don't we do this? When it comes up, I'll tell you to cover your eyes. And when this part is over, I'll tell you can uncover your eyes, and then we'll watch the rest of the movie. And I was like, okay, deal.
That's a great babysitting move.
It was
A+ babysitter
she
move.
She knew the movie so well, obviously.
Yeah.
And so I was always attracted to it, whether it was in fantasy or whether it was, light horror, something like Beetlejuice, I would say.
I remember seeing Beetlejuice in theaters.
In
that
theaters?
movie. In theaters. I'm an old fart, as from the beard talk. And those... My God, my horror stuff. I mean, my dad got me into horror too. I mean, I remember the video store. God, I miss video stores because those box art would make me choose a movie. I mean, the Friday the 13th box art got me, and I had to get that.
Yeah.
I had to go watch it with my sister. And it didn't scare me that much, but I was like, ooh, this is creepy, like the the woods, the music, it's great. Amityville Horror, the possession that really scared the shit out of me. That was because I mentioned up top that I was so young and I loved my family so much. I mean, I was like, I had that, like, I was worried, like, and I had the whole, the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez.
Oh, yeah. That's right. You're a California boy.
He was close.
I forgot about that.
He landed close to, like, maybe
that
5 miles.
Is
yeah.
insane.
And my mom came in one night and I was sleeping with a baseball bat. I'll never forget that moment. So there was a lot of different things that colored my life. But my dad really got me into horror movies, like, and you can argue Jaws being a horror movie. I personally, I don't totally classify it as a horror movie because there's that whole third act that's like adventure at sea. But there are horror elements, of course. Alien is one I remember my dad going, okay, your mom went away this weekend. We're watching Alien. And I'm like, okay, what's Alien? He's like, now, it's going to scare you.
Yeah.
And I go, okay. And he's like, but he did what the babysitter did. He's like, I'll tell you when. And it was when the first one, Tom's. I'll always remember that he never told me to look away from the chest bursting scene. He told me to look away when Scarrett finds it in the ventilation.
That's so funny
because it was that thing.
Such a great scare. That's a fun.
That's a good one. But okay, so why horror? You kind of explained, but you mentioned Wes Craven as your favorite. Is he's your favorite director?
Of the horror
genre.
Yeah, like a lot of people look to Carpenter, Craven, Romero, Cronenberg, Tobe Hooper.
Oh, Tobe
George
Hooper.
I said Romero.
Yeah.
So like of that stable of guys, which most people I think point to.
Right.
For me, Craven is the one who is the most interesting.
Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, I have memories again of that and watching that opening scene of just the boots and the bag of stuff and then the music and then him making the glove and that. There are so many impressions that come from horror movies.
Yeah.
What are some of your iconic moments from horror? Because I have the Wes Craven, Nightmare on Elm Street, that scene. I have the alien scene, the scene. Those things stand out to me. This is just fun for me. What are some of those iconic moments that you would like? Is it from childhood? Is it from your favorite last year when you saw It? Like what are some that pop to your mind?
Well, I will say the more I watch It, Andy Muschietti's It.
Does it get better for you?
Yes, it does.
We just watched it the other day.
So many layers to that movie. I mean, I feel like, so many layers to Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise. Actually,
oh God, yes.
I feel okay. So, I feel like this is a good conversation to have because I hear the criticism I hear from It is from a lot of people about Muschietti's It is, oh, it's not scary. It's not scary. And what I always say to people is, well, yeah, because this is the 12-year-old version.
Right.
Like, I believe that Andy made a choice, a filmmaking choice to show Pennywise and orchestrate scares that in ways that would scare a 12-year-old. What are you afraid of when you're a kid, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we talked about this a handful of times on Nightmares too, but for me, the true test is going to be Chapter 2 because Chapter 2, as we are dealing with the adults, and if you have read the book, you know that the things that scare you as an adult are totally different.
Oh, boy.
It's self-doubt. It's marrying an abusive partner. It's drug addiction. It's bankruptcy. It's losing family. It's whatever. And so to go back to that, though, I watched on the Blu-ray of It, there is this behind the scenes with Bill Skarsgård about playing Pennywise.
Oh, I watched it.
Yeah. So the two things that stood out to me the most were that he's I forget that he's 24 years old.
I know.
He was when he made that movie. And I'm like, because when you look at him, he looks like he's so big. Like, he's a large man.
Yeah.
And also, he just is in that role. There's so much depth to that role that you forget that a 24-year-old man is behind the makeup. Yeah. And then did you see the one where, because there's a handful of little vignettes in there, but did you see the one where he rolls his eye? And for those of you who haven't seen it,
It's really gross.
Andy Muschietti's like, I always pictured Pennywise with googly eyes, like just kind of like looking around and like kind of this weird thing. And Bill Skarsgård like cuts to Bill Skarsgård and he's like, oh yeah, I can just do that. And he like moves his eyes so that they go opposite directions. And he can do the face too. And so I was just like,
he did the lip.
Yes.
He does this like, I can't even do it.
No, I can't do it. But he can physically do those things.
He's born for Pennywise.
I mean, it was just truly like, and as a result, listening to him talk about the character, when I watch the movie now, I see so much more, whether nuance to what he is doing, that it makes me appreciate it even more.
I keep watching, and I've heard those complaints as well, that it's not scary. And I'm like, what movie are you watching then? Because it scared me. But as I keep revisiting it, it's because I care so much about the kids. The kids that, like, he did, Muschietti, the whole team, did the most amazing casting I think I've ever seen in a horror movie.
Really
in
good.
A long, long time, at least. Let's not be, I'm not going to throw around the absolutes. But it made me care so much, so that when you're having that moment at the Glen, when they're all sitting around doing the kids stuff, it's like you fall in love with these kids. Then you care about them when they break up. Then, break off, I should say. And you're wondering, you really worry about these kids. And that's the horror for me. And then the brutalness of it. I mean, I don't know what that scene where Bill sees Georgie in the basement, and Pennywise is almost controlling him.
Yeah, he is. He's using him like
He's
a doll.
like a doll. How is that not scary to you people? It's just one of those things. It's a brilliant movie. I love that you brought up it again.
That Neibolt Street scene, though, stands out to me.
Yes.
Like the one with where everywhere from like pick the right door and do you want to play a loogie down to Bill coming out of the refrigerator.
The refrigerator, oh yeah.
And just the glee that he's having. It's so, and he's got like, speaking of moments, I tweeted about this either earlier this year, maybe last year, but there is a moment where, so he's on top of, I know their real names and now I'm like blanking on, Eddie Kasprak. So Eddie, he's on top of Eddie. Eddie's just broken his arm and he's about to eat him. And then he hears the kids and he looks over his shoulder and he pushes Eddie's face down.
Oh yeah.
And the camera is here, and it is it's a look that has so much in it. And because Pennywise as a character is not just goofy, he's not just scary, he is a predator, he is this other being, but there's everything from menace to sexuality to like glee to joy to
hunger.
Exactly. It's just all in this one look.
Yeah.
That moment, that sequence for me in recent memory, that and something maybe from The Conjuring are my the two things that stand out to me the most in like recent horror cinema.
Yeah, and we should talk about that because it's recent that this, and I remember coming out of The Conjuring, you bring up a great kind of moment for this. The Conjuring I went to by myself because I had to know what people were talking about. In that, I needed to know why Warner Brothers had to give it an R and release it, and that the test is the scariest movie since The Exorcist. Like, there was some stuff happening, and I went opening weekend on a Sunday because I couldn't. I don't know why. I think some people just couldn't go with me. Whatever it was, but I walked out of there and I went and I tagged James Wan on Twitter, and I said, "This is the scariest movie since The Exorcist, for me at least."
Yeah.
I look at The Conjuring as kind of where this renaissance started happening. Maybe you have some thoughts on that. What came before, maybe, or after, like, because we're in this renaissance right now.
Yeah.
And it's going to lead into some of the meat of that I wanted to get to with the Halloween movie coming out, and where we're going to go after that. But what are your thoughts on The Conjuring kind of starting this off?
Well, timeline-wise, 2013 was the year The Conjuring came out, and it is a huge year for modern horror.
Yeah.
January kicks off with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, just I think called Texas Chainsaw at that point. I don't remember.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Which Justin actually worked on.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, which is crazy to me.
I didn't know that.
So it kicked off with that, making tons of money, and I think really solidifying January Like, I think
Yeah.
studios started to, because if you follow movies or entertainment, you know that January is a dumping ground.
Yes.
But releasing this big horror movie in January right after Christmas, Texas Chainsaw blew the doors off. I
Yeah.
mean, it made a ton of money that opening weekend. After that, a little bit down the line, and I think I remember this because for me, in addition to the things that were hits, the things that were not were Blumhouse had a big year that year. The Purge came out that year.
Right, okay.
And made a ton of money. And I want to say Lords of Salem. Can we get a fact check?
Yeah,
When did
let's-
Lords of Salem come out?
Let's see what we got here.
Because if I'm right, and if it's
2012.
Okay, so 2012 was a great year for Blumhouse. That's
Yeah.
right, because they put out all these weird movies. They put out Dark Skies. They put out Lords of Salem. They put out Insidious Chapter 2, and I want to say there's a fourth one, but I was just like, wow, these are all so different. That's crazy. Now, I think we think of Blumhouse as like being a hit maker.
Sure.
But at that time, it was so cool that they were. Am I right? Did I mess anything up? I hope
No,
not.
you're right.
But,
You're right on.
I at the time I was like, wow, Blumhouse is like doing different horror things. Dark Skies is aliens. Lords of Salem is like
Which I like Dark Skies.
So-
It was on the other day, and we caught like maybe 15 minutes in. I'm like, wait a minute. This is scarier than I remember.
I need to give it another try because I remember
It's not bad.
I remember
It's not great.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
I remember it not being great in the theater, but maybe I need to try it again. But anyway, back to 2013. So, because The Purge was 2013 too. Can we get a fact check on
I'm
that?
going to fact check that as well.
Because
I
I'm
think
99% sure.
Yeah, let me see. The Purge, 2013.
Okay, yes. So 2013 was this huge year for horror, which had been brewing the year before with your Insidiouses and stuff like that.
And I didn't want to make, like disregard Insidious because I did enjoy Insidious, but
Yeah.
it was The Conjuring was more of my type of horror movie.
Because The Conjuring, I think, is a great movie.
Yes.
The
Hands down.
Insidious movies, or Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, James's movies. Not to say anything bad about 3 or 4, just that the Lambert chapter, right? Or
Yeah.
this arc or whatever. Those are great horror movies or fun horror
They are.
movies. But I think
Absolutely.
you could quantify The Conjuring as just a great movie. I
mean,
think
look
it's
at his shots.
yeah.
The Conjuring
The
is
filmmaking,
art. The
yes.
filmmaking. I mean, you're going in through windows and you're like
Mm-hmm.
upside down and you're seeing things differently and I'm with you. Okay. So keep going. This is
No,
great.
that's kind of it. But I think so. That's where I think it started brewing and I want to say in 2012, in addition to Blumhouse having a crazy year, witches were super big at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I will always argue that what's popular in genre is always a reflection of what a society or something is scared of.
Absolutely.
And so I think that, there are correlations to be made, whether you're talking about quote unquote torture porn in the mid 2000s, which, you can look at torture online, or you can look at torture in war times. And then there's like a direct line to
Yeah.
Saw and The Hills Have Eyes and
Absolutely.
Hostel.
And I love it when you look at, and especially you, Clark, that's one thing I've always admired and noticed about your talk of horror is the reflections that
Right.
it is coming off of in society. And I kind of want to now steer this into Halloween coming out because Halloween's my favorite horror movie of all time. We're getting a sequel now.
Yes.
Which is a direct sequel. Sure, everybody, I know there's Halloween 2 and then Season of the Witch and Return of Michael Myers and blah, yada, yada, yada. We're ignoring those,
Yeah.
and rightly so. Are you a fan of that idea that you can ignore those movies and start essentially, not from scratch, because I know we have the 78 version, but it's a bold move for me.
Yeah.
Because you're basically telling an audience, ignore those, the canon junkies or the people that love those movies like I do. I mean, I every Halloween I watch all the Halloween movies, all the way through it. Even the horrible Resurrection, even the horrible Curse of Michael Myers. I still have there's a soft place in my heart for Return of Michael Myers and Revenge of Michael Myers, Part 4 and 5. But so, what did you make of them saying, you know what, Blumhouse, this is what we're doing? We're even getting rid of Part 2, which was the other night, 2007's remake, Rob Zombie's Halloween was on. And I decided to watch it again. and go, because I didn't like it when I first saw it. I almost said hate. It's not that much. But they took the whole Strode family connection thing and rebooted it and made it part of the reboot. And I'm like, wow, now you can't even do that. Now Carpenter and company were like, no, Halloween, no family connection. At least I haven't seen the movie yet. I don't think you have either.
No, I have not.
But were you okay with that, ignoring all the Halloween movies?
I was, because I think in your best case scenario, you don't want to completely scrap or redo the original.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
You know, which to be fair to Rob Zombie, even though I don't love either of his Halloween movies, it's a tall order to start all over again.
It really is.
So, you know, he was definitely working within the parameters that were challenging. So I think it was smart that they said, nope, we're keeping Carpenter's original film, and then we're building off of that. On top of that, you know, I was recently working on a piece about Deborah Hill, who is the co-producer, the late co-producer and co-writer of Halloween.
Fantastic. And part 2, right?
Yeah, so she co-wrote Halloween, that's right. Halloween 2, I'm sorry, yes. And The Fog and Escape from New York.
Right.
With John Carpenter. And, you know, by all accounts, Halloween 2 was an unpleasant experience for everyone.
Yeah.
They didn't like making the movie. It was a different director who ran his set, because
Rick Rosenthal, I think is.
I don't remember his name, but
I'm gonna fact check that as well.
Let's fact check. But I think that, you know, in talking to so many people about the making of Halloween, in researching Deborah, which I had been doing sort of behind the scenes over the last handful of months, because I was working on something for it. The biggest thing was it was a family. It was a family atmosphere, and everybody was having such a good time making the first one.
Oh, yeah.
So I think when this phenomenon happened and it blew up, I think John and Deborah both were probably kind of taken aback. And, you know, Carpenter now is a crabby old man.
Sure.
But
he's earned that right.
No, and I say that only to say not to call him names, but
I get what
I'm
you're
saying
saying.
it with quote fingers, of course. Like, I think that's very much a persona. But the point I'm making is that I think that he didn't even want to.
Yeah.
You know, continue. And if you look at Halloween 3, which attempted to anthologize the Halloween brand.
Yeah, because that's what they wanted to do, I thought,
now
originally.
Would be so brilliant, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, now if somebody was like, it's an anthology on Halloween night, everything happens differently, people would be like, oh, cool. They wouldn't be like, I have to see Michael Myers again and again and again. So I say all of that to say that scrapping 2 and beyond and starting there, I think makes sense for John.
Yeah.
John, you know, John Carpenter, and I think that he's probably cool with that, and so I actually don't have a problem with it.
I didn't either. Well, I'll say it this way: when I heard it, at first there was like mixed reports.
Right.
It was going to be actually after Halloween 2.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. And then Laurie Strode's going to come back. Okay, that all makes sense. And then, but other than that, when they said, no, we're getting rid of it's even Halloween 2 is gone. I'm like, cool, I'm fine. I'm fine with it because of the team behind it, because of John Carpenter essentially saying, yep, here are my blessings. And then, oh, by the way, I'm an executive producer and come and do the score.
Right.
And I hear the score is just gangbusters.
I think I'm going to see it next week at Fantastic Fest.
My God,
So
I'm jealous.
very excited.
But it was Rick Rosenthal. That was a Schmodown 5-pointer for me.
Good job. That is a 5-pointer. I wouldn't have gotten that.
I think he came back too and did Resurrection, I want to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I would find that hard to believe.
I'm gonna fact check. He came back. Halloween Resurrection.
Was
2002.
Was Resurrection the one? Oh, with
when they
Tyra
actually
Banks
killed. Yeah, when they kill Laurie Strode finally.
It's the last one. Basically.
Yeah, it's after H2O. Okay. Yeah. Then they reboot after Resurrection. But yeah, he did come back for that. Which, wow, I can't believe I got Schmodown.
Yeah, that was very good. Halloween category, you would crush.
I would crush. But that's interesting. When we're talking about the anthology of Halloween, or how at least that's what they wanted to go. But what happened was it blows up. Michael Myers becomes a household name, I guess you could say, and launches the slasher film genre.
Right.
Really. Because then in 1980, right, we get Friday the 13th. So 2 years later, and they're trying to recreate that. And then that ushers in a whole new kind of crop of slasher films.
Right.
It's funny to think it occurred to me when you were talking about that that wasn't. They wanted something to do an anthology. So I look at Season of the Witch, and it's like weird.
Yeah, so
It's
weird.
Crazy. What do you? Yeah. Do you like part 3?
No, I sure don't. People try
I
to.
respect it. It's fine. I don't revisit it a lot.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't revisit it at all. If it's on TV, I'll put it on because it feels Halloween-y to me. In that, I remember memories of Halloween, and it's on, and I'm just like, that's a kooky movie.
Right.
But yeah, I keep going back to this slasher genre because it did give birth to our Jasons.
Mm-hmm.
Would you call Nightmare on Elm Street a slasher film?
I think it fits with it. Yes,
It fits.
I would. Even though it's not a guy in a mask.
Right.
It's like this. I would
It's the same
agree it's
thing.
a slasher movie.
Okay.
Yes.
How do we get back to those? Like, meaning, like, everybody's always, like, we talked about trends and reflections in societal issues. Like, we haven't had a real slasher movie that's popped, I would say, since what? I don't even know.
So this is really interesting because Happy Death Day is a
Not
slasher
bad.
movie.
Yes, it is.
And it made a ton of money,
Yeah.
like well over $100 million.
Yeah.
With
And
no
we're getting a sequel.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
With no stars.
Yep.
And no iconic visage,
Right.
or reboot.
I think they tried with that mask, but
For sure. I mean, they definitely tried, but I think what I'm saying is that there was nothing that came before that was like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
an image that you can go, oh, I know what that is,
Right.
or whatever. So,
I getcha.
So, for me, and then again, I always say if you like slasher movies and maybe you skipped Unfriended, I think Unfriended is a slasher movie.
Yeah.
It's a slasher movie without a guy in a mask with a knife, but it's
That's
like
right.
totally a slasher movie. As is, if you ask me, and again, this is like loose parameters, but I think Alien Covenant is a slasher movie.
Alien Covenant.
Like if you, I was watching Alien Covenant in the theater.
I
and
have to watch this again now
Please watch
through
it
your
through
eyes.
this lens.
Okay.
Because I was watching it and I was just like, God, these people are morons. And then I was like, just the way that they were getting killed was so stylized. And then like at some point, there's even a couple having sex in the shower and they get killed. And I was like, this is a slasher movie. So I was like, oh my God.
Yes, it is.
So I feel like if you watch it in that way, Alien Covenant is less of a disappointment. If you think about like old man Ridley Scott being like, I'm going to make a slasher movie, but with an alien.
Oh man, Ridley Scott, I love it.
I just think that's so funny to me.
That really is, yeah.
But to your point, I don't know if
Yeah.
slasher movies will come back because they are so simple, and I think audiences are more sophisticated now.
Yeah.
The question for you or for the audience is, after Scream deconstructs an entire genre and then again kicks off that genre with Urban Legend and
I Know What You Did
last
yep.
summer and My Bloody Valentine
Yep.
and so on and so forth. But Scream like really shined a light on all the tropes.
Yes.
And deconstructed them and then subverted them. And so honestly, I don't know if you can just make a straight slasher movie anymore.
Yeah, our audience, because I think audiences are. That's such a great point that I didn't really think of was the fact that he really did deconstruct it, really shine a light on it, and then you can't get away with that anymore.
Right, exactly.
And that's so interesting to me because then we had that Scream renaissance and we had all those movies that you mentioned, and I was all in on Scream and most of the sequels. I think I like all of the sequels, to be honest.
You're generous.
In different, like
Sure.
Scream's the best. Scream 2 is the second best.
Sure.
And then 3 and 4, I think they all go in order
Yeah.
for me. But you get to part 4 and it's like, what can you do that the audience is already 5 steps ahead of you?
Well, and on top of that, if you ask me, the
Mm-hmm.
answer is you have to give the audience a lot of credit.
Yep.
And if you do that, you have to trust that they are not showing up for just slash and scare.
Right.
So that's where I think you get into this tricky place, like with a Kevin Williamson, who is a writer who is like, yeah, I wrote Scream when I was 20 or whatever. And now let's talk about other things in this world. That this is a real deep cut. So.
Yeah, do it.
Or it's not even a deep cut, but it's So there was a show on CBS. It was called Stalker.
Okay.
Kevin Williamson created it. It was Maggie Q and Dylan McDermott. It was on for one season.
Okay.
And maybe 2 or 3 years ago, so it was fairly recent. And it was a procedural. But at the end of the day, what was the underlying theme was Maggie Q's character was a survivor of a very traumatic assault.
Okay.
And she worked in the LAPD stalker unit. Ooh. And so basically now of course Stalker of the Week, Monster of the Week, but then there was a subplot that strung everything together. And for me, that was always the most interesting part. Now, I bring that up because I would argue, and you can go down a real rabbit hole with Scream, the Weinsteins, and Kevin Williamson, and Wes Craven, and all the jerking around that happened, and how awful the Weinsteins were to Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson.
Oh, sure.
Not to say that it's a surprise, Harvey Weinstein, that great guy.
Shocker, that guy's an asshole.
But, the story that I've always heard is that Kevin had a true trilogy ready, and he was fired from Scream 3, and Ehren Kruger was brought in.
That's right.
And so it was like Scream 3 obviously stands out from the first trilogy as kind of it's weird. It doesn't really quite fit.
No, it doesn't.
And so then on top of that, okay, so Scream 4 happens. Wes is back, Nev is back, Courtney's back. Kevin Williamson, and this is what I have always heard, was promised a new trilogy. So if you come back, Kevin, and we get the whole team back together because Wes won't do it unless Kevin does it, and Kevin doesn't want to do it because the Weinsteins have dicked him over 1,000 times. You get a new trilogy, and then he got
a new Scream trilogy.
Yes.
Okay.
And then he got fired off of Scream 4, and they brought in, I want to say, Ehren Kruger one more time, and it was just the saddest thing. So what does Stalker have to do with that? I think that show Stalker was Kevin's pitch or vision for the future of Scream. Sydney is a survivor. Yeah. And she is working with other victims and of course there's always going to be nefarious people trying to do something. Yeah. But I do think he probably, and this is all I'm guessing about all of this, but I did watch the show and I was like, I've always wondered if that was what it was because it's so close,
I want to see this now.
But at the same time, can you pitch to the same audience who comes in for slasher movies at Halloween time? Oh, also, the real story here is that it's a lady who survived assault, and she's in her 40s now, and she works in law enforcement. And that's what we're going to ask you, regular movie-going audience who just wants to turn your brain off and watch a slasher movie, to accept. I don't think that mass audiences would want to take their slasher movies that seriously.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. It's hard. I mean, it's like with the slasher movies, we brought it up on Collider Live too, with the Friday 13th.
Yeah.
It's such an easy premise.
Sean Cunningham himself, meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
Those are his words.
Yes.
That's all Friday the 13th is. It's nothing special.
Nothing special.
Very simple.
It's the campfire, the story, a kid drowns in the lake, and now we hear he's haunting the woods. And then all of a sudden people start dying. I mean, start there. But it comes around to Halloween again and to everything you just brought up. And Scream is such a brilliant example of now where I'm like, I wonder if audiences are way too smart now to really get mass audiences, big audiences that need these movies to do well, or at least studios need a big audience to come to make this thing pop. At least in theory. I know you can make a $2 million horror movie and sometimes it could just pop.
Right.
But so now, are we going to just be relying on nostalgia?
Right.
Because Halloween is nostalgia.
Yes.
But whether you want to believe it or not, and this is from the Halloween fan, you are picking up, you're getting rid of all those movies, you're bringing in the iconic score, you're basically saying, and we're getting, and this is the one thing that worries me about the movie and the sequel now, is that it's just Halloween Part 2 and the same story. But the thing that's different, which I like, is Laurie Strode is wanting him, at least in all the marketing materials, she wants him to escape because PTSD, the nightmares, she wants to end this.
Yeah.
And she wants to take Michael Myers out. I like that angle. But when you tell me that he's already captured, he's going to escape again, I'm like, I'm seeing this, it's the same movie, right? Like,
Yeah.
is that what would bring slasher movies back? So for instance, can we get Friday the 13th again and pick up years later and we ignore all those other movies and Jason is still alive or something like that? Is it Nightmare on Elm Street where we pick up years later and people start having nightmares again and he's back? Candyman is getting a reboot, so they say. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, how you reinvigorate these franchises is you go back to the simple thing that they are, right? And then you elevate the simple thing.
Yeah.
So, for instance, Halloween 2018, H40, as my nerdy friends and I are
H40,
are
I love
calling
that.
That is a revenge story.
Yeah.
Right? A confrontation story. That, you don't need to know anything about the Halloween franchise. If you see that trailer, you go, this guy attacked that lady 40 years ago. She's been waiting for him to come back, prepping for him ever since. He escapes, showdown. That could be a Halloween movie. That could be a Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that is the key to not getting bogged down in the mythology and all that. Now, by the way, you know about me, I don't like slasher movies, and it's because I like mythology. I like a story that truly builds on itself.
Right.
So that's kind of why I don't really like slasher movies. But that said, I think that you look at something like Nightmare on Elm Street. Audiences know what Freddy Krueger is. They know he attacks you in your dreams. So here's how you do that. It's as simple as kids who are having trouble sleep. I mean, it's the same basic premise, but elevated a little bit. What's your take on this? Do you want it to be It, where the grown-ups who survived, Nancy's friends or at Nancy's school or whatever it was, now their kid? Who the fuck knows? But all it is I think distilling down these slasher icons because they are simple.
Yeah, they all started simple.
This is the thing that is just, and we talked about this on Collider Live. Like, Jason's not that complicated.
No.
And the thing that audiences want from Friday the 13th is sex and kills and Jason and it's truly that simple. Now, I'm not saying you make a paint by numbers movie because then you just get these faceless sequels over the years that mass audiences don't really care about, you know?
Right. And that, and I worried a little bit about the Halloween thing because it's I don't even know how many movies we have now. It's like
10?
I'm not going to do the math. Well, maybe I'll do the math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Reboot. Yeah, so it's the 11th.
Well, do you count Rob Zombie?
Yes, I counted those.
So if you count Rob Zombie, then
just in the number of movies.
Right, but there is a Halloween 8, right?
Halloween 8 is the 7th is H2O.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
okay,
the 7th is H2O. The 8th is Resurrection. Then 1 and 2 Rob Zombie. So we're at 11 now. Okay. And I was wondering, our audience is going to go, even and just regular audiences, making another Halloween movie?
Same.
I ain't going.
I truly, and now I don't feel this way, but from an outsider looking in and somebody who knows genre a little bit and thinks that maybe I understand audiences a little bit, I thought this movie was going to flop hard. I thought they were counting on an audience that wasn't there.
I was worried. Yeah.
But now I don't feel that way.
I don't feel it anymore either because of the horror genre being what it is today, the nostalgia that people can go and ask around maybe they go like, wait a minute, I think Jamie Lee Curtis helps.
Agreed.
I think it's just, and you see that trailer and you're like, I think audiences now are like open to it.
And, who was telling me this? Someone was Christian. It was Christian on Collider Live saying his wife doesn't even like scary movies, but she wants to go see Halloween. And I think it's because no matter how old you are, whether you were a teenager when the original Halloween came out, you saw it later, whatever, you remember that movie and you remember enough about that movie to go, oh, it's the same people. I'm in. Like I want to revisit.
I hope because I can't wait for it to come out. I love it, and it makes me wonder what it's going to do for the nostalgia slasher movies.
Agreed.
Like Friday the 13th. And so I thought it'd be fun as we start to end it
Yes.
here, we're getting close to wrapping up, but what would be your pitch for one of the movies out there that were so iconic? What would you pitch and get it out there into the world? I'll start with mine while you think.
Okay.
And it's Friday the 13th. Shocked?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes.
And this one's going to be out there because there are so many. But since I'm playing with Monopoly money, we pick up years later, however many years from, I believe it was 1984, the final chapter. Okay, I'm going to ignore all the movies after final chapter.
Okay.
Jason didn't die. Tommy Jarvis did not kill Jason. And he's been in a coma for many, many years somewhere in Camp Crystal Lake Hospital or whatever. And then on Friday the 13th, he rises and Corey Feldman's Tommy Jarvis comes back.
Oh, God.
And there's your movie.
Oh, boy.
It is so stupid. It is the worst idea I think ever. But it would, if we're talking Halloween and like this resurgence of like nostalgia fare, I think it could work. And it just goes, it's simple. He's just back.
Yeah.
He's walking around now. He gets out. It's kind of what happens at the beginning of part 4 anyways. He wakes up in the hospital and he kills people and then he goes on another killing spree.
Yeah.
But at least with this time, I think we bring in Tommy Jarvis and see where it goes from there.
Well, I bet Corey Feldman would be available.
This is part of the reason I do it because it's like I think he just heard me and
Yeah,
he's like, I just signed
probably
on.
outside right
He's
now.
like, hey, I got a script.
Yes.
I don't know if it'll work. The other idea would be to embrace all of them, and it's like zombie Jason. You just can't kill him. And so you go there. But there's got to be something because did you read the Guzikowski script?
No, but I remember you talking about it and the mom and the family of killers. And
They're all killers.
Yeah.
The dad, the mom, and Jason. And Jason comes in the third act, fully Jason.
Right.
With a hockey mask, which I don't remember how he got it. But I just didn't. I'm like, I think you're like, the familial connection is really where all the reboots have gone as well, and it's just weird.
Leatherface and all the
Leatherface.
things. This is the thing. I feel like we talked about this on Nightmares one time, but like I always think of that Patton Oswalt joke where he's talking about the Star Wars prequels, and he's like George Lucas is trying to, hey, do you like ice cream?
Yeah.
Well, this is a bag of salt rocks and like cream, and he's like, what do I do with this? He's like, well, this is where ice cream comes from.
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
well, that's not fun.
You like Darth Vader? Yeah, here he is as a kid.
Exactly.
Wait a
Here's
minute.
a close-up of his nutsack. I think that was the joke, the Patton Oswalt joke. But it's true because this is where he came from.
Yeah.
So I bring that up because it's silly to me. Like, we don't need to know. The mystery is fine. And also, audiences are forgiving in terms of, like, setting it up.
Yeah.
Just like, here are the rules. Okay, great. Rest of movie, please.
That's such a good point, too. I mean, all of those slasher movies literally fell in that trap.
Yeah.
Because by the time you get to parts 4 and 5 and 6 and what have you, you're trying to explain away why this person does it. You had it in Curse of Michael Myers. Really, oh, do you know why Michael Myers is this way? Because there's a curse and there was a cult of Thorn that back in the days of the Druids, you're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
This is crazy.
This guy's the shape. He's the boogeyman. You don't need to know anything.
Yeah.
That's why Halloween is my favorite because it really tapped into my primal fear of you're home alone, your parents are gone, escaped mental patient on Halloween.
Sure.
That's it.
Terrifying.
Terrifying.
Yeah, I think my pitch should be kind of touching back on what we got to on Collider Live. I've always wanted more from Hellraiser.
Yeah.
But I've always
I was hoping
wanted,
you'd bring that back up.
Yeah, I want more from Hellraiser though. That's not afraid to be sophisticated or artistic because I love that first Hellraiser movie and
It's one of the best.
yeah, and you know, I came to
brutal.
it.
It's so
it's
scary.
so brutal, and I came to it as an adult. Like I was living in LA, so I was in my 20s. I had never seen that movie before.
Oh, wow.
And I every time I say this, it sounds like I'm making a pun, but I'm not. It really got under my skin. Like it really startled me, and I have watched it every couple of years since, and it still holds up for me because at the end of the day, like if you're willing to really go there, what are you willing to this woman has decided to kill these men, to sacrifice. She's in this horrifying and terrifying situation. And it's like, what would you do? Like, what would you do? And then I always think about this. Once she makes the decision to go for it, it's like, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. And the descent after that is like, that to me is terrifying, because I always think about some of the stuff that scares me the most is that in an instant your life can change for the worse.
Yes.
Like, you make one bad decision. Now, granted, this lady killing men and feeding them to her husband or lover in the attic, and like that's extreme. But one bad decision can ruin your life and other people's lives forever.
I love that. And I can see why you like the mythology of these horror movies too. Like Nightmare on Elm Street has a mythology.
Yes.
Hellraiser, mythology.
Yes.
And speaking of that, that's what stuck with me, was that drop of blood bringing back the lover, and seeing that thing crawl as it kept getting more powerful and more blood would drop and all. That's the stuff of nightmares right there.
It is. And I think it would just really take... Did we talk? I think we pitched this on Nightmares. Like, it was like, who do you want to be the new Pinhead? And I think I said Michael Fassbender.
Oh, that's so good.
And I still stand by that.
Yeah,
I think he would be a great...
He would be fantastic.
Or a great leader of the Cenobites.
Oh,
because
yeah.
as the audience is probably screaming at home, like, I know Pinhead wasn't the big deal in the first movie,
right?
And
That's
became the icon. But the box is truly fascinating to me. But the idea of Cenobites is truly fascinating.
The Cenobites is a great mythology of horror. Yeah, the box. It's like it's all that. And that she makes a deal with the devil.
Right.
I mean, that's what it is.
It's as simple as that.
It's again, it goes to. I'm seeing the theme here. Some of these horror movies, Hellraiser, Pinhead didn't become a big deal until later.
Right.
Like, all these movies, they're not setting out to create the next thing. They're setting out to tell their story, and it just happens to catch fire and becomes iconic and becomes something that people latch onto. And I think if we're going back to slasher movies, I think you got to just tap into that primal thing where it's, I like the stalking angle. That's scary as shit. I mean, I think that can be anything in today's world, especially with like what we do. That scares like my fiance sometimes. She's like, I worry about if you yell at somebody on Twitter or get into it on Twitter, what could happen? I'm like, that truly terrifies me.
Yeah.
And I know what you went through with some of that shit. My God.
Yeah.
But the idea of the simplicity of it. So I'm wondering what Halloween's going to do.
Me too.
I'm wondering if it's going to, all of a sudden afterwards, we're going to get, I know Friday 13th rights are locked up right now, and nobody's going to be banging down my door except Corey Feldman for that horrible Friday the 13th pitch. But it'll be interesting to see if we get another Nightmare on Elm Street.
I agree.
Or Candyman, sure. We'll see if that goes through. What else is out there? I mean, I know that Blumhouse, he mentioned I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream, but it's the rights. I don't know. What would be your movie if you, just the one, as we wrap this up? Just one of those old movies, can be any one of them, that you'd want Blumhouse to get their hands on.
This is so frustrating for me because I was a child of... I remember when Blumhouse, like, gave James Wan license to make Insidious.
Right.
Like, after, Dead Silence kind of flopped, and he had this phenomenon with Saw, and then it was like, okay, go make a more serious movie, quote fingers, in your style. And that, or, finding new directors and giving them and great ideas the chance. Like, that's always what that to me was what Blumhouse used to be about. And now they're a powerhouse for sure. Yeah. So I don't know what I want them to do. I don't.
Original. You can say original. Just keep doing your thing then.
Yeah. Or they have kind of one franchise that I did want to see them go back to, which was Oculus. But Oculus got all tied up in, I think it was Relativity Media and the rights. Or I've actually asked people who worked at Blumhouse before about the rights to maybe do like an anthology TV show, and they were like, the rights are just in hell.
They're just nonsense.
It's just like impossible. But
that sucks.
The mythology of that mirror, what that mirror saw. That mirror only had, 3 or 4 cracks or however many cracks in it. And so what are the stories behind those cracks of this mirror that has traveled hundreds of years across the world?
Do that. That's
I find
a great
it
idea.
fascinating.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cheat and say Oculus.
I like it.
What's yours?
God.
Friday. It's got to be Friday the 13th, right?
It would be, I think
for Blumhouse.
You know what? I'm gonna go the opposite way. Give me Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
because I think Friday the 13th, the rights are all weird now. I don't know. And Blumhouse already granted my wish. They took Halloween.
Sure. Yeah.
I think with Friday the 13th, I don't know what they're going to do with it. I don't know how it'll land. I think, it's probably going to be a reboot, but we'll see. But yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, I think there is so much mythology there. There is so much that you can play with. Even Copster had a great idea. I don't want to steal his idea, but it was such a great idea. But it's along the lines of, I think that Freddy, I think you could go, you know what? What if years later, it's kind of like Pennywise? He returns. Mm-hmm. I think it's simple.
Yeah.
It's simple, and then you play with the rules. You do there, and I would take one thing from the reboot: those power naps or those weird naps. Is like when you're like, and I've had those. I've had those nights where I don't sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm like, or a movie theater.
Yeah.
I just fell asleep for like a split second, and then what could happen there? That'd be fun to see Blumhouse play with.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know. Okay, let's wrap this up right now, Clark Wolfe. Give me your top 5 horror movies all time.
Okay, there are 7 of them.
Give me your top 7.
I only say that because I have a pre-canned answer, but I can't narrow it down to 5. So
This is why I love Clark Wolfe. This is every reason why I love
Give me your top
Clark
5.
Wolfe.
I'll
Give me
give
your
you
top
se-
5.
there
I'll give
are
you 7.
7.
You give me whatever the hell you want to give me.
Okay, here it is. No particular order.
Okay.
John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh yeah.
The Hills Have Eyes remake.
I love every time you say that.
Yeah.
When I first started getting to know you and you said Hills Have Eyes, I went, oh yeah, remake. I went, okay, that's somebody that knows her horror, because that movie is fucking brutal.
It is. And
it is god awful brutal. Holy shit, Ted Lemine, you go out horrible, tree burning.
So bad.
Stop it. Oh my God.
It has so much to say too.
Yeah.
Like I will say, as a film student, when you read about the social implication of horror, right? So you can look back and go, Invasion of the Body Snatchers was talking about communism.
Yeah.
It was, Night of the Living Dead was addressing the Vietnam War and casting an African American man and what that felt like, right, for the audiences who were seeing those movies at the time.
Right.
And for me, The Hills Have Eyes remake came out in 2006, I think. I'm 99.99% sure. And it was right in the middle of the Iraq War and so many things that I was aware of. 2006.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so much like what I was aware of and what I was thinking about, and that was the first time that I experienced the things I had read about in books and about social implications and things like that with horror. So
that's amazing.
John Carpenter's The Thing, Hills Have Eyes remake, The Exorcist, Scream, The Descent.
Oh, I love The Descent.
Drag Me to Hell.
Drag Me to Hell. Love it.
I love that.
Yep.
And Cabin Fever was there, and I think it's still there, but
Nice.
The Conjuring is named alongside all of those things at this point, the first Conjuring movie.
I love that. All right. I'm just going to rattle off some. Nightmare on Elm Street, The Thing, Poltergeist.
Yes,
The
Poltergeist is in my
Exorcist.
top 10.
Yeah, I love Poltergeist. Halloween. What did I say? Okay. The Exorcist. I'm going to start over. The Exorcist, Poltergeist, Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, Halloween, obviously, The Thing. Did I say Poltergeist?
Now, yeah.
Poltergeist.
Any Friday the 13th?
You know what? Okay, I know I love Friday the 13th, but none of the movies would make it into my top 10.
Got it. Fair.
And it's just because it was a sign of the times for me.
Totally.
Why I got into it. But because there's really not a horror movie, Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th did something interesting. The original movie did something great. It made the mother the killer.
Right.
I thought that was brilliant. And it was, but the movie is not something you go, that's filmmaking.
Right. Sure,
I'm with
totally.
you. I'm with you. I like the filmmaking. Like The Exorcist is beautifully shot. I would put The Conjuring in there because when I interviewed the Hayes brothers for Schmoes Know a couple years ago, I rewatched Conjuring, the original, and I couldn't. I was so scared.
It's insanely creepy.
It is so creepy, and just to know that they're on the phone with God, why? What's her first name? Lorraine. I wanted to say Ellen. Lorraine Warren, and she would go, "Shut up, shut up!" Like she would be telling the voices to stop, and they would hear it on the phone.
Oh my God!
And I started to in that opening where it's like, and I'm just like, oh God, I'm really scared now. So I think those are my tops. I'm trying to think if I'm missing any. And Scream. Scream is always going to be up there.
Yeah.
Because those are great horror movies. And this has been a great horror conversation.
Yay.
Clark Wolfe, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Please, what do you have coming up? Tell the world where they can find you and all that good stuff.
Yes, so I am really, I got it in right under the wire on Collider Live, but now I'm really trying to push Instagram. I'm trying to do more video content on Instagram. And I'm going to be doing a social media takeover for Sci-Fi Fangirls at Fantastic Fest.
Nice.
So I'll be recording reactions. So you can be recording reactions to movies. I have a feeling Suspiria and maybe Glass have not been announced.
Oh
so
my God.
No
okay.
promises. But
No
know
promises.
I saw Split at Fantastic Fest.
That's right.
Like
you did.
4 or 5 months before it came out.
That's right. Because we were still doing Nightmares, weren't we?
Yeah.
Because you were like, there's something at the end there that
And I
was like, okay.
very carefully said it's not a twist.
Right.
It's a reveal. Because I think that's very important.
It was a reveal. Everybody kept saying, did you see
Not
that
a
twist,
twist.
Riley? And
Not a
I
twist.
had your voice in my head. I'm like, not a twist.
It's
Reveal.
a reveal.
Reveal.
But yeah, so lots more, going into Halloween, lots more recommendations, reactions, and hopefully activities. I want to go to, so yeah, Fantastic Fest and who knows what else. But Instagram, at Clark Wolfe. Clark with an E, Wolfe with an E.
Nice. Well, thank you again for coming. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
Love just digging in for horror. Again, congrats, champ, to
Thank
the
you,
co-champ
sir.
for the for the Shire Wolves. Well deserved. And for everybody out there listening at home and watching this, thank you so much for supporting the Reilly Roundtable. It is on One-on-One with Christian Harloff on the Podcast One feed. It drops every Thursday. Please check that out. Share it with your friends. Please go into the iTunes. Leave a comment. Rate it. Let me know how I'm doing at Reilly Around on Twitter and Instagram. And if you so desire and want more Reilly content, yep, I have a Patreon page. Patreon.com/The Reilly Roundtable. You can go there. Just added a $20 tier. It's going to be doing some Q&As, some Google Hangouts, and a Schmodown match. I'm going to have some people, we're going to Schmodown each other.
Love it.
It's going to be really fun.
Good practice.
It's good practice, as well as some extra shows over there. You can check all that out, patreon.com/The Reilly Roundtable. But this is episode 14 in the books with my special guest, Clark Wolfe. Thank you all for joining me. We'll see you next Thursday for an all-new episode of The Reilly Roundtable. See you then.